Hey everybody, this is Darius Arya, and I'm coming to you live from Rome. And let's get this show on the road in just a minute here as people are joining in. And we have our chat open. So this is our second seminar here for kids, and based upon what everyone has been asking me, as well as everyone saying to me maybe where you're from and if you can hear me okay. Salve, everyone, Jason, Erica, wherever you're from. Thanks everyone for joining in. We have Warren from the American Institute for Roman Culture as well. Behind me, you've got a nice little image of the round temple in the Forum and a copy of the Marcus Aurelius statue in New York, in Tennessee, and North Carolina, great, in Texas, hello, hello, hello. So hopefully you who are joining in have your kids. If your kids aren't with you, then please be aware that all these videos, all the seminars go on our live stream, our YouTube channel within a day. So you can share that great content. Hey there in Chicago and California, and we have a lot of people joining us, which is fantastic. Please keep on sharing the links. Today we're going to talk for the kids about what it's like to be a kid in ancient Rome. Now, what are the parameters here that we think about? We think about, I don't want to mention school, but I know a lot of you are in school. I don't really want to bring up school because I know a lot of you kids are like, I don't like school, or I just spent all these hours on online school, or whatnot. What it is like, let's walk through, well, not just school and life in general, let's talk about. Let's talk about being born. So when we're born today, your parents, you give birth, you're in the hospital, and they're saying to themselves, oh, my kid one day will be the president, my kid will be doing this or that, or my, whatever their passions or interests are, they want to pass it on to their children. But in ancient Roman times, you didn't actually recognize that child, that boy or that girl, as yours until 9 or 8 days had passed. Because so many children, unfortunately, back then in ancient Roman times, died. And so that meant many things that are different from households today. It meant that people got married really young, and people had lots of children in their family. Okay, so we're just zipping through here. So giving birth was hard. You weren't going to the hospital. You didn't have the means that we have today with their obstetricians and doctors. You had the midwife that helped you deliver the baby in your house. And then you hoped that that child would live in the next several days, about a week and a half. And if that child did live beyond a certain number of days, 8 or 9 days, you recognize that child is in your family. And then you gave them an amulet. Does anyone have a good luck charm? Does anyone have a family necklace? Does anyone have a family bracelet or something like that? That's what you got as a girl and a boy, and it protected you all through your childhood. And then when you became an adult, when do you kids think you're going to become an adult today? Are you going to be 15? Are you going to be 20? Are you going to be 30? It depends on how we look at our children nowadays and when they're actually independent adults. So in ancient Roman times, it was very, very young. So you had this amulet you wore around your neck that protected you. And when you became an adult, around 14 or 15 years old, you then put that in the family shrine and you started wearing adult clothes, right? You were wearing kids' clothes were a little bit different than adult clothes, just as today, kids don't wear exactly what adults wear. For the boys, they were going on a certain path and trajectory. The girls on a different one. And we'll quickly go through growing up as a boy, growing up as a girl, and then we'll jump into all the things they did for fun. But the first thing is, though, the girls tended to be married. They tended to get married very young as an adult. And on the flip side, you have the boys going the route of in the military, and if they can, go into the life of the forum and in the law courts. So I see a lot of people here, a lot of age groups we're talking about exactly. So when are you an adult, and when are you an adult today, and when are you adult back then? So for the girls and the boys, it's kind of two different things. The boys were geared towards what men did in ancient times: politics, war, and voting. And the time of the Romans, women weren't voting. Women were being raised to manage eventually the household and to help oversee if they had slaves, what the girl was going up to become. Okay. And of course, so much of what we have in the literature, when people wrote a long time ago, thousands of years ago, the Romans, they tended to record what people did in their social class. So they're talking about a lot of things like wealthy people, lots of property, lots of opportunity, lots of slaves. Okay, and we will get to the slaves, we will get to the majority of people that were underprivileged and did not have the means that the wealthy people had. But we have a recollection of a lot of what the wealthy people were doing, and in part it kind of reminds us of a person going to college today. If you have the means, then the family, the father in particular, is raising the boys, teaching them to fight, to ride, to swim, to read, to write. But with the passing of time, you have the pedagogus, this slave that you entrust your children to, that takes them to a school, takes them on their chores and their errands and so forth, and kind of oversees them and gives them guidance. And in those wealthy households in Roman times, your child was learning Greek as well. Great writers and authors before the Romans that were well established. And so as also the empire grew, it was a Latin, Greek, bicultural kind of culture and language that was going around. And the educated people, so think about today, that go to college, learn a language, learn another language. It's that kind of idea. And it's not a bad idea to learn another language if you can, because it forms your mind differently. You get in tune with different cultures, you get in tune with different ideas, how to solve different problems from different perspectives. It's not just the language, it's all the culture that goes around it, the beliefs and the ideas. So if you're lucky, you then had several tutors, probably slaves, that were purchased by your family to give you this good education. And if you were really wealthy and you have real opportunities, they'd actually send you over to Athens and cities like that, in what we call Greece. There were city-states back then, but basically you do have the opportunity then to study abroad, which is a great thing to do even today if you're in college. Maybe get the opportunity to study abroad, study in another culture. So those are some of the fun things that you could do if you had the means. Okay, so in the Republican times, people are gearing towards being a member of society. The men were voting, the men were participating as best they could, and then you have that class in which the people that had greater means and wealth in Roman society had more of an opportunity to guide and be a participant in politics beyond just voting. You then became the person that was elected into office to be a member of the Senate. Okay, so this is what the kids are thinking. What am I going to gear up to be? Okay, so you have these tutors, and what are you learning besides ancient Greek if you're lucky? The basics: reading, writing, arithmetic. But then they spend a lot of time memorizing things and becoming a good speaker. So think about how much time you spend memorizing something in class. How much time do you like doing that? How much time do you spend doing that? But the exams, so much of ancient Roman times was spoken because you would be speaking in the law courts as a lawyer. But today we write. Maybe we post photos and we make a PowerPoint presentation or whatnot. But back then, so much of it was geared towards, can we speak and give a coherent argument? And that's a big part of life back then. So we really want to think about that. Now we want to think about, as we make our way through the city, where were the kids going to be going? Well, like I said, you could study at home or you could go off to a school. There weren't public schools, so your parents were paying for it. And ultimately, you would be put there with other kids of certain means and sit there in the shade of a building, in a covered walkway. It's kind of like renting out a spot within a mall. You know, when you're in the mall, there are the big store, department stores, but then there's the small mini shops. You'd be going to one of those. That's the kind of school system you had within that reputation, and then your parents wanted to bring you there. Okay, so that's a bit about school. And really, the girls don't get so much of that education. The girls are getting their education in the home directly because the outlook for their life is very different. And be that as it may, although girls were limited and weren't going to have those positions as women in society, there are plenty of examples of educated women, women that had very respectable reputations, and they weighed in even in political matters. This is a society in which women can participate publicly. This is a society where men and women dined together, which might sound like, well, of course they dined together, but not all civilizations at that time allowed women to dine with the men. So they have interaction and social interaction with men in many different ways, but they're not going to be active religiously. So where do you go during the days? We know some of the sites in ancient Roman times. We know the Colosseum existed. We know the circus for chariot racing existed. We know that there are theaters for theatrical productions and comedies and so forth. We know that there are bath facilities. So can the children go to these places? It seems that there are many things that kids could not do. Going to watch the gladiators kill each other, it's kind of like an R-rated movie. You're not really allowed to do that, okay? So that's one of the things we got to get very clear. There's certain things that are violent in society, and kids cannot do that because they're kids. It's for the adult audience. Even though we'd say today an adult is 18 or 21, in Roman time it would be 14. Okay. Could the kids go to the baths? Typically, bathing for the children is at home. And bathing in the public facilities, the great baths of Caracalla, the baths of Diocletian, and so forth, really don't seem to be for children. It's for men and it's for women. Okay, so we have those sort of situations involved here. But there are public latrines, public bathrooms, and your parents could take you in to use those if you had to go to the bathroom as you made your way through the city. Sure, you can walk through the forum. Sure, you can go to the markets. Sure, you can, but you're being accompanied by somebody, by your parents, or the slave, the pedagogus, who's taking care of you. That is how you made your way through the city. You didn't just wander through the city. So you're born today, I don't know where you are in the world, and you say, I can achieve certain things because there's basic care. There's public education, okay? I've got lighting, and I got middle class. There's something you can strive for. But in ancient Roman times, it doesn't come down like that. You're either very, very wealthy, and then there's everybody else. And if everybody else doesn't have much, how can you get by? So we're talking about the wealthy people. The city is crowded. The city is full of traffic. It's noisy. It's even dangerous. So where are you going to go? What is your reality going to be? So most people, if they're not from that wealthy class, what we do know is that many, many, many people do what their parents did, do what their father did. So what are the kinds of jobs that people can do and learn as an apprentice? Because that is how you do it. You work for free, and then you can, the streets are full of garbage, the streets are dirty, exactly. So therefore, you literally have to improve your condition or jumping into reality where there is a fixed job that these wealthy people that we have all the written sources about. It's fun to read about the son of Cicero that studies abroad. It's fun to read about the children of Augustus. You could say they're rather spoiled and very entitled. But most of the people, they didn't have a lot of slaves. They didn't have a lot of property. They're growing up in very, very difficult circumstances. So you look to get a job that would ultimately put a roof over your head. So at a young, young age, it wasn't about all that schooling. It was about, can you get a job with somebody and learn a trade? So you learn to weave. You learn to work leather so that you could be a shoemaker. We go to the store, we buy stuff all the time, but somebody was making it by hand in ancient times, and it took years to learn that practice. So that's a lot of what we have to do. What if you're working on a farm? What if you're working with animals? Okay. Do your parents own a shop? Are you going to be able to also pay attention and learn that particular trade? Stonemasons, bricklayers, barbers. I gave a little 5-minute little introduction on the tonsor. This is the person that's going to be cutting hair. And there are some anecdotes about the apprentice and when you're learning from the master, just like when you go to the barber shop and then you have that barber for many years, and then here comes the new barber, like, I don't know about this guy, but he says he's fine, but he's learning on your head, okay, as he's cutting hair. What about a librarian? I'll get some proper terms here. A librarian. So say like you are literate. You could be a slave owned by somebody, you have an aptitude for writing, or somehow you know how to write. I mean, that's a pretty rarity. Maybe. What are other things that people could do? Okay, if you can write, that could be a job. You're a copyist. What do we do today if we want to make a copy of something? We get a Xerox. We make a copy, right? We take a photo, we print it out. But back then, all you had was somebody that was capable. If you're good in math, you became a calculator, a calculator. You would be good at accounting. Now, on one hand, you could be a slave and do this. On the other hand, you could be someone that would, ultimately be sought out after, right? So these are the people that if somehow they could get that education and they worked really hard for it, then ultimately they can improve their own condition and have a better job. So I'm not just making this stuff up. People told their stories. And where do they tell their stories? On their tombstones. So many people weren't writing the books, didn't have the leisure time to write 50 books like Livy, a famous historian in the time of Augustus. They left it on 3 lines of their tombstone. And it said, "This is me. I was a barber on this street. I was an ornatrix. I was a person who did people's hairstyles. So I had a beauty salon and I did the hair of my mistress. So I'm, in the household of a wealthy Roman, not so uncommon, or I had my own shop and people came to me." So this is the way in which kids grew up fast. Kids, not like people like me in school till I'm 30 getting a PhD. You grew up fast. If you're in the military, you show aptitude for something, next thing you know, you become an engineer and you are building a bridge. You're building a fortification. Okay, so that is a lot of opportunity there for people in the military. As today, what do people do? I'm going to improve my own condition. They're going to pay for my college. I'm going to give years of service in the military. I'm going to learn skills, and I'm going to learn skills that I can apply in life. That is exactly what happened in ancient Roman times. And you're doing this as a teenager, as a lot of young men and women now go into the military at maybe 18 years old. Okay, you can be in somebody's household, or you can be purchased as a slave, as a little child, and you are trained in a pedagogium. So you have pedagogus is the slave of the household that's going to kind of chaperone you and teach you, and a pedagogium is where they actually teach the slaves. So I'd love, as we're kind of winding up here, I'd like to take questions. Please don't clog the chat, but ask real questions in the chat. Were kids ever slaves? Absolutely. So if you have slaves and those slaves have children, those children are slaves as well. And in the bottom line here is that those slaves are owned by somebody. Those slaves are going to make money for somebody, but those slaves could also get educated. And ultimately, many, many slaves in the ancient Roman times became free. Freed for service, freed for loyalty, freed for hard work. And then, of course, the Romans would need more slaves. If a freedman and a slave had children, would they be slaves? The freed man can determine whether or not he wants to recognize that child as his own or not. So it gets a little complicated. Would children have pets? The number one pet was a bird, so a bird in a cage, right? Or a dog. We call that man's best friend today, back then as well. Cats, not so much, but it really was the dog, the dog, the dog. And where do we see them? On the tombstones. Of course, dogs should have jobs. The guard dog, right? Slaves got a peculium. It was like an allowance, and they could save that amount of money, and they could buy their own freedom. Kawaikanam, beware the dog, exactly, very famous mosaic in Pompeii, which is a great place to learn a lot about ancient Rome and get a sense of where the kids are. What are the most mathematical concepts the Romans understood? Well, they weren't getting, actually, there's some quite complicated things. Sometimes they did things in their own way, not the way in which the complicated mathematics that we produce today to replicate some of those ideas. But when you look at some of the engineering in ancient Roman times, a lot of it is because through experimentation and less so on the mathematics and the physics. Did kids with jobs get paid? Well, when they're kids, it's usually an apprenticeship. So they're learning the skill, and that's their payment. What jobs did slaves have? Okay, we got, they can be artisans, goldsmiths, masseurs, they could be tailors, they could, so many, many things that people, we do today, they were doing them as well. Slaves in the house could be the doorman, the people that are cleaning, the people that are cooking, the people that are serving food. They could be the nurse, they could be a clerk, they could be a secretary. Okay, so just, imagine all the things that we pay people for today. You bought them and then you owned them, and they would do those same tasks. A normal day I look for a girl is you're learning the skills in the home. So you're learning how to weave. You're learning how to, manage things in the household, including the slaves. You're getting basic reading and writing if you're from a wealthy household, but you're not going on to become a public speaker because that's what men did in the forum. Slave was very smart to get freedom. Absolutely. Definitely. Everyone, and your questions. This is going to go up on. This is going to go up on. This is going to go up on our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is We Dig Rome, American Institute for Roman Culture. Please go to that. Please subscribe. We're trying to get to 4,000 hours of views this year. With your help, we'll make it. Warren's putting up a lot of links. There's so much content. We have 10 videos on the Roman Forum and all the forms of the emperors. This Sunday, I'm talking about Augustus, the Emperor Augustus, one of my favorite emperors. So I'm going to spend some time chatting about him on Sunday. I'll be back next Wednesday for the kids. We'll work on some of this interaction a bit so we'll have less interruption and so forth. But this is a democracy, so some people can misbehave. We're going to have to deal with that. I'll be better at that. And I'm so glad for the rest of you for taking the time to join me here. I'm in Rome. You can follow me on all my channels, Darius Arya Digs. Go follow @SaveRome on social media channels, also on Facebook. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate that's what we're really going for right now. And of course, you can share these live stream seminars from our YouTube channel